Hi, this is Nick Park again from Evangelical Alliance Ireland. And yes, it's Friday, and that means it's time for our weekly video. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. And the Sunday that we're talking about is Sunday, the 5th of July. We praise God that the public health situation in Ireland has improved to such an extent that we are now able to meet as churches 3 weeks earlier than we thought we would be. That is wonderful news. And so Sunday the 5th of July is the date that most churches will be reopening for worship. Now I say most because not all will. Some churches will feel they cannot be ready in time. Some may be more cautious. Also, there are particular difficulties for churches that do not own or lease and have sole use of their own premises. For example, many churches rent hotel function rooms, and a number of hotels have already said that while they are going to reopen for guest accommodation, they are not going to be reopening their function rooms. So I would strongly advise churches that are in that situation to be talking to their landlords now about whether it is going to be possible to reopen on the 5th of July. Also, churches that borrow another church's premises, there are issues there as well, because buildings will have to be deep cleaned between services. And so again, churches that borrow the premises of another church need to go to the leaders of that church now and start making sure that they can make the proper arrangements in time. So that's why I'm saying most churches, probably the vast majority of churches across Ireland, but not all, will be opening on Sunday the 5th of July. Now, we're going to be sharing through Evangelical Alliance Ireland. We are going to be sharing some guidelines and advice and also some tips from church leaders across the nation who will be sharing things that they're going to be doing and brainwaves and God initiatives that they've had for how to open safely. And we can all learn from one another at this time. So that's really from the beginning of next week, we're going to start unrolling out those guidelines. So please do keep an eye on our website, www.evangelical.ie, to keep up to date with all the latest recommendations and guidelines and tips. I would just say this, that there are some things we don't know about yet when it comes to reopening. In other countries, we have seen particular restrictions put on worship services, and we need to be prepared for the fact that these could be announced by government as we get closer to the 5th of July. Some of the limitations that have been placed by other countries, for example, is a time limit on how long services can last. We don't know if that's going to happen here or not. Or a maximum number of people that are allowed to attend a service, or even a maximum percentage of the normal seating capacity. Also, whether there will be a recommendation or even an order about wearing masks for people attending worship. These are big issues, but we just don't know yet. Also, and this for me is the most serious one, I think, is that in some jurisdictions, churches have been told that they are not allowed to sing. The reason being that whenever we sing, moisture droplets are released into the air, and some would consider that to be an added health risk. Now, we are going to look at ways and produce advice on how we can reduce that risk. For me, I have to say that probably for evangelical churches more than any other kind of church, singing is such an important part of our worship. It's very hard to imagine that how we can have church without singing. Having said that, I have been in churches where it's had to be done. I've ministered among the persecuted underground church in China, where sometimes we meet in people's homes where they cannot sing, where they have to clap their hands without touching their hands, because if other people heard that noise, they would call the secret police and we would all have been arrested. So it is possible to have worship without singing, but I really, really am praying, and I would ask you to pray too, that that will not be an issue. So these are things we don't know about: a time limit, a maximum number, a percentage of capacity, the wearing of masks, and whether there would be a prohibition on singing. So let's make all those things a subject of prayer, that we will have clear guidance from the government, and that we would know exactly what is required and not required, and that it will not be things that will create such a burden that they make worship almost impossible for us. Now, having said that, there are many things that are good advice to do, and over the next 2 weeks we will be sharing so many of those things with you, both in written form and in video form. So there's lots of things that we can do, but we don't have to do. And there's also going to be lots of good tips coming and good ideas, as we said. But for today, I just want to say that when we do resume church, and this is important for church leaders, but it's also important for every church member, because we need to face the fact that church is going to look a little bit different from what we're used to, and that some of these things are unavoidable in at least the short to medium term. One is that physical distancing will have to be observed. Now, I'm using the term physical distancing rather than social distancing, because I believe that the church can be socially connected no matter what physical distancing restrictions are in place. Now, I've used the term social distancing in the past, but I do believe that physical distancing is a much better term for us to use, and that has actually been recommended by the European Evangelical Alliance in many different countries. So physical distancing at the moment, 2 meters. Now, I know there is talk of that changing, but we have to do our planning on the assumption that 2 meters apart will be the rule. If they change it, well and good. That actually helps. It means we can accommodate more people in each service. But initially, our planning must be for 2 meters, and then if it changes, praise God. So what 2 meters apart, that does not mean, for example, that every seat has to be 2 meters away from every other seat, because a lot of people attend church as a family, and they're living in the same home, they're traveling in the same car to church. So it would be a nonsense to make them sit 2 meters apart from each other. And so we can seat family units together. But each family unit or each household unit that is attending a church, whether that be one person or if it's a family of seven people, each unit must be separated in seating 2 meters from every other family unit. I would strongly advise all church leaders to go into your church. If you haven't already done it, do it today or over this weekend. Go into your church building and start playing with the configurations of your chairs. We did this in our church, and can I say we were pleasantly surprised at Solid Rock Church in Drogheda. We had, just as an estimate, without actually doing the hard work of shifting all the chairs, we had guessed that we could accommodate 80, at maximum 100. But whenever we actually set them out with physical distancing, we discovered we could seat 135 people in a service. So I'd urge you to go in, and that you know the figures you're dealing with, and that is going to help you with your planning. Also, physical distancing does mean no handshakes, no hugs with each other except our own household. I know that is very difficult, and so it's very difficult in my church tradition, but it is important that we observe this, because there's 2 things we need to understand, and this is based on the experience of countries where churches have already recommenced worship after lockdowns. Is number 1, don't be surprised if numbers of people that are coming back the first few weeks are small. You know, we all sort of had this idea that as soon as the lockdown's over, everybody's going to be flooding back into church. In most places, it has not happened like that. A lot of people are nervous, and it's almost like Noah's Ark when he sent the bird out, that people are saying, well, I don't want to be the bird that goes out the first time. So we may find numbers are a bit down. But another thing that we should take note of is that many churches have found that if they don't observe physical distancing, then neighbours and onlookers will call the police. That people feel quite angry if churches are not caring for the safety of the community around about them. So it is important that we practice these essentials that I'm sharing about today. If we don't do that, we put people's lives in danger and we forfeit people's goodwill and respect, and deservedly so. So that means we need no hugs, no handshakes, and you know what? We've all got people in our churches say, oh, never mind that, give me a hug. We have to say, no, please, we don't want you to get the church shut down, and we don't want you to put anybody else at risk. So physical distancing, 2 meters apart. Every church will have to have hand sanitizer and tissues readily available for everybody, sufficient quantities of that, and will also have to have a signage up about, keep the same kind of signage you see when you go into shops or anywhere else, telling you about keeping the 2 meters apart and having consideration for one another. So these are the three main issues that are essential. Other things are advisable, other things will be a good idea, but these are the essentials that we need to observe: physical distancing, provision of hand sanitizer and tissues, and proper signage. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be talking about a lot more issues, but these are things we can start acting upon now. I just want to warn you that already some suppliers are running out of hand sanitizer dispensers. So don't leave that till the last minute, but do something about it now if you are a church leader. Look, we have challenges ahead, and we at Evangelical Alliance Ireland are committed to helping churches and ministries and individual believers negotiate those challenges. We want to see everybody worshipping safely and back in their places of worship again as soon as possible. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about this a lot more. So look, it is Friday, but Sunday is coming. There's a Sunday coming in 2 days' time, but there's also Sunday the 5th of July coming. And I pray that as we draw closer to that date, it will not be with a feeling of nervousness or trepidation, but it will be a feeling of joy and with confidence and anticipation that we can meet with the people of God face to face once more in worship. Look, may God bless you. And again, please do join us next Friday for another edition of It's Friday, but Sunday's Coming.